AI is now part of our lives and it will be critical in helping us make decisions, but it's not without its challenges. Today, we're going to be talking with a company that focuses on solving some of the big problems. So stay tuned. Hey everybody, this is Chris Brandt here with Sandesh Patel. Welcome to another FUTR podcast. Hypergiant is a company that was started to help solve some of the big problems in critical infrastructure, national security, space, and defense. And while building an effective AI is challenging on its own, maintaining a strict ethical code is absolutely critical. So today we have Hypergiant's CEO, Mike Betzer, here to talk with us about how AI can solve some of these difficult challenges, allowing people to make good data-driven decisions, and how Hypergiant's Hyperdrive data science platform makes it all work. Welcome, Mike.
Thank you very much. It is great to be here virtually. I think we're all getting used to this new virtual world we live in. But thank you for having me. Excited to talk about Hypergiant.
Yeah, no, I'm excited to talk to you. I mean, this is like I mentioned, AI is a really hot topic right now. And I think, we're just seeing just an absolute explosion of AI in every aspect of our lives, right?
Yep.
But before we kind of dig into all of that, can you just give me a little bit about, Hypergiant, and what was the idea for starting Hypergiant, and what was everybody thinking?
The number one problem with AI and technology when you're really working out on the edge of what technology can do is helping your customers kind of get there and envision the art of the possible, envision the future, envision making decisions when you have all of these inputs that are actually helping you make millisecond decisions with the correct data. So Hypergiant, its roots is really in unbelievable design. So we have phenomenal designers that can design the future state of warfighting when you have AI helping you. So we design that. And then we also have a bunch of data scientists who can help make that become real. Because data changes, data drifts, you have different inputs, you have different sources, you have different rules, and you need really good data scientists. So you have to be able to design the future, but you also have to be able to execute upon the future. And the number one shortage in America or in the world right now is data scientists. So we've got an awesome fleet of data scientists who can help our customers be successful. And we design the future. And then we use Hyperdrive as the engine that sits in the middle that actually delivers that capability.
And I think you touch on a really interesting point, because one of the things that we've seen, which is an absolutely massive problem in the industry right now, is just this gap in people to do the work. And even when companies can hire a person here or there, it's very hard to retain them because, one, they're very expensive, and two, they want to be working on really interesting problems and lots of interesting problems, right? And so it's hard to retain that talent. It's hard to get it. It's hard to retain it, right?
Yeah. And it's easier. It's a little easier. It's still hard, but it's a little easier when you're doing things that matter. I've had a wonderful career. I've built some companies. We've sold some companies, and it's all been around enterprise software. I was super excited about this and Hypergiant because, we are protecting people's lives. We are protecting our grid. We're protecting our infrastructure. Look, let's face it. If there is a terrible, terrible thing that happens, the power grid gets shut down. The communication grid gets shut down. The water supply gets shut down. And you shut that down, as we saw in the Texas freeze that happened a few years ago, people panic in about 24 hours. So it's critical infrastructure is now considered national security. So we have to protect critical infrastructure like we protect it, like Army, like Navy, like Air Force. It's the same thing, because if you look at our energy power plants, what's protecting them? It's a wire fence that I could literally drive a car through. So it's there's nothing protecting them. And we have to change that, because that is national security.
I want to emphasize that point. I mean, I've built, multi-megawatt, very secure facilities, and, had to bring in power and, dealt with, some of the challenges of the grid and the unreliable nature of the grid. And we've seen the prospect of, cascading failures across grids and how devastating that can be, right? We saw that in New York, many years ago.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
You mentioned a few things just there that I think is really interesting. And I want to touch on that because, we talk about critical infrastructure and things like that. But, what are the big problems that you guys see as what we all need AI to solve?
I think the most important thing is to just start simple. I mean, there is so much data. So let's not try to do super complicated things. Now, there are some people that are doing some super complicated things, which is really cool, and we're doing some of that as well. But there's some simple problems that need to be solved. Example, there's a thing in the Army called the water buffalo. The water buffalo is nothing more than a 300-gallon tank of water that supplies water to the troops. That's all it is. But there are no sensors on the water buffalo. And so they don't really know how much water they have left. They don't know how long the people are in the field and how much water they have on their person. So just think of us triangulating sensor on a water buffalo to understand the water level that is in that water buffalo.
Right.
The weather forecast for the next 7 days in, pick a place, Afghanistan. And you have 240 troops in the field. You have 240 troops. The average troop drinks 1.5 gallons of water a day. Blah, blah, blah. I'm making that up. And this is how much water we need, and this is how much water we have. If troops run out of water, troops start making poor decisions because they're severely dehydrated. And so just something as simple as triangulate water buffalo data, how much water is within 2 miles, that's clean and protected. What's the weather forecast? Because if it's 80 degrees, they drink a gallon a day. And if it's 120 degrees, they drink a gallon and a half a day. And if they're in active combat, it goes up, So exactly what the troops are doing. You know exactly what the weather is. And you know exactly how many water buffaloes you have. But today, that data is just guessed by the generals back there trying to make decisions. Do I need another tank there? Well, how much water do you have? Oh, it's about half full. Maybe we should have sensors and AI triangulate water with the people, the weather, and the water buffaloes to just make a simple decision to make sure they don't run out of water. I mean, look what's going on in Ukraine. What happened to the Russians? They ran out of gas because they didn't have any. They just miscalculated their fuel supply and war stops,
and their food and their water and their weapons
and their food and their water. Yeah. So good for the Ukraine. But so our mission is to prove the art of the possible by just improving simple things like that. It's not insanely sexy, but it matters. We have sensors that read the amount of rust on a tank. So we can predict when it is most likely that tank is going to break. And then make sure they have the right supplies to fix that tank. Knowing when a tank is going to break, because the people that are on that tank can tell you that the tank is about to break because they're right there and they see it, they feel it, they understand it. Getting that data from that person, data from the tank to the supply chain so that they can get the parts. Look, we have an 87% probability that we're going to have this problem on that tank. And if you're 87% right, then you should make sure you have that supply of the part within, 50 miles of that tank. So simple. These are simple decisions, right? This isn't rocket science stuff.
Although you do with rocket science stuff too.
We do that too.
I'm sure we'll get to that. But I mean, you say there's simple problems, but I think like even those simple problems, when you're telling me this, like the water buffalo, there's also so much else that can go into some of those decisions. You're kind of providing some of those basic decisions, but then you can apply, I would imagine, AI to all sorts of things like where's the best location to store that water buffalo, and you kind of get into like these traveling salesman scenarios, and you have logistics and troop information, but you also have where is the attacks coming from, and where would be the best place to So I would imagine you start with a simple problem, but it gets infinitely complex really quickly too, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So we try to break them down into simple missions because that's the way the military works. It's like, look, all we're trying to do here is make sure we have water at the right place. So let's not get too fancy. Let's just make sure we look at these 2 or 3 external data sources that are public data, weather as an example, and let's look at internal data sources, troops, and water supply. And it's a pretty simple mathematical equation when you put that all together to make a decision. And that alone can be the difference between a mission being successful or a failure, which is very, very important.
Yeah,
so that's a simple one. And we like to start that way. So that's where we start with design. It's like, well, why couldn't we triangulate this data? Let me show you on a display. This display is going to be at command center. So command center can see exactly what's happening in the field. Here's the way your monitor is going to look, and this way you're going to read this. And you're going to see, here's the visual overhead of the 80 water buffaloes that you have, and this is where they are deployed, and here's how much water you have stored. And it's just showing them how they can see what's happening in the field, because we have amazing satellite imagery that can show us all this stuff now.
We talk about, like you satellite imagery and, and then critical infrastructure. So space and critical infrastructure. Can you talk a little bit about like what some of the big challenges in those spaces are?
The biggest challenge I think that we face, I'll just say as America, but I think as this whole planet, is everything that we did in the 50s and 60s is still what we rely on today. And that's just scary. I mean, if you look at our electrical grid system, everything was built post World War II or for World War II. Yeah. You look at all of our technologies, we have to move faster with technologies. We have to move faster with drugs. We have to move faster with adoption of new things. And unfortunately, we as a society have put so much bureaucracy in everything we do that everything goes slow. Now, what I'm super excited about is somewhere the military has said, hey, maybe the best rocket scientists aren't in NASA. Maybe the best rocket scientists are in private sector. So let's just go hire, let's just go contract. Yeah. So outside contracting 10 years ago was not a thing, or 15 years ago for sure was not a thing, because we built it here, it's all safe, it's all secure. So we were working with an energy grid company, and we wanted to put surveillance over their grid. And they said, well, we can't do that. That's private data. But really, just to see where your grid is and to look at it. And they think this is all really private data. So we just literally went out to public data sources and pulled all the data to show them exactly their grid because the data is out there. And companies historically are just used to being unbelievably conservative. And I don't think we can invent the future by being conservative. Yeah. Now, luckily, these companies have said, look, let's just bring in Hypergiant or someone like a Hypergiant to say, why don't we gamify the way we look at all of our aircraft? Okay, cool. So let's just, and we get to do that for them. We get to do that for the Air Force. We get to be connected into Space Force, into the Space Camp. We get to be connected into the Army remote combat vehicles. And they're letting us in to do these little projects, which are big projects for us, right. Small in the scheme of the military, but we're showing them the art of the possible.
You're hitting on something that's really critical, because I think so many companies get caught up in the fact that, every dollar you take out of the expense line rolls right to the bottom line. But, like every dollar you put into growing the company, it doesn't affect the bottom line so obviously as reducing expenses. So I think companies, like you said, have gotten very conservative, and they're not as innovative maybe as they should be, or they could be, right?
Look, we as technologists, we love to use the word AI. New technology is so cool. Aren't we? Isn't this something? We're just trying to leverage data to make decisions. Yeah. That's all that AI is. It doesn't. Now, there's some places where there's really cool AI that's doing things to replace humans, but generally speaking, it is just leveraging data that's coming at you at such a pace from so many sources that a human can't make that decision. Yeah. So the warfighter can't look at the weather forecast and the amount of water and do this. I mean, that would take an individual a couple hours. And we can make that just update every 15 minutes automatically. And you don't have to worry about it. So those are just cool things to do.
Well, and so much of what you're talking about, brings us into another topic, that's really central to a lot of this as well. And that's this idea of edge computing. And we hear just so much about edge computing and Internet of Things, right? All of this stuff. And I think, some of that now has become operational technology is yet another new buzzword, right?
Yeah.
But like what you're talking about is actually really critical stuff that has to happen on the edge. Like if you're in the field calculating water and doing all these other things, or dealing with remote power plants, a lot of this stuff has to happen at the edge. Could you talk a little bit about the practical use of edge technology?
Yeah, so it's my favorite. This is my favorite. So I grew up in the era where there wasn't a cloud, right? It was all on-prem. And then we all moved to the cloud and the world's going to be a better place. And the cloud is awesome. I'm a huge fan. So we decided to go all the way in with Amazon. So we have done a deep, deep partnership with Amazon. Our stuff is all secure and certified in the Amazon Gov Cloud. Okay? That's cool because most of our data in this world still isn't in the cloud. It is still on-prem in different places, which is surprising. But the most important thing is, look, you can't help the water buffalo. You can't help the fighter unless you have an edge product. So we have now deployed our software on the Amazon Edge product. It's literally a briefcase. Think of it as a suitcase. Think of it as a small suitcase that sits out on the edge that is taking sensor data off of my body camera, off of the tank, and off of satellite feeds, putting it down into this edge device that may be connected to the cloud or may just update to the cloud every 3 days, right? So they may have that edge device may even be too remote to get connected, or you don't have enough bandwidth to get connected to the satellites. Every single thing I shouldn't say everything. Most things that are important are happening on the edge. The car is an edge device.
Right.
The tank is an edge device. My body and my vitals of my health is an edge device. We can't be good at AI unless we solve the edge. And I am happy that we have spent a lot of time with Amazon and with Snowballs to make sure that's their product that they have on the edge. And it's just like so cool. It's so cool.
Well, and I think, and there's a lot of technologies that are converging right now to kind of make edge more viable. Like you mentioned, Amazon Snowball, which is a really interesting device. And like originally we always saw that as they started it off as a way to get data into the cloud. Now it's going back out to get things to the cloud in, I guess, a different way. Right. But like now we've also got 5G converging here as well. I mean, how do you see all these factors kind of coming together, and what is that doing to the landscape?
I think the best thing that we are doing to enhance network in this world is space and Space Force and Starlink. And you think of that, it's like, look, we can't, and this goes back to everything that was built in the 50s and 60s, right? The networks. I mean, we can't build towers. We can't, you need network wherever you need network. And what Starlink has just shown us is that, oh my God, when we can really get the LEO orbit to really become the network, when that becomes the network and we have 5G or better everywhere, the world just becomes a better place. Mm-hmm. Because we all are connected. And, because the problem is still out there on the edge, they only have so much network, so much capacity. And that is the biggest throttle we face. So still, it's like there's 20 things that are competing for that snowball to take that data and put it up and then get it over here.
Yeah.
And we have to make sure that we have enough bandwidth. So ultimately, at the end of the day, we're not going to be amazing at this until we get LEO to just literally be this network around the globe.
Yeah, I remember the first go at that Iridium, which I bought stock in. That didn't work out so well, but no. But I think like especially when we look at 5G, I think one of the things that's really interesting about it too is that it's not just end to end communications. It's point to point and like multi-hop communications and things like that. So that when you're talking about like remote locations, the ability to do that kind of multi-hop piece gets really interesting. And also it supports really low bit rate communications too. So like when you're talking about telemetry from IoT devices, that low bit rate communication that has a really long throw can be a really interesting part of it all,
Yeah. No, absolutely. And look, the network problems that, like for us to help with the grid in America, a lot easier because you do have 5G, you have towers, it's all there. You don't have a network problem unless you really have a network problem. But so that's simpler. But when you get out to the fighter at the edge of in a unique place, that's harder.
Yeah.
So we are leveraging 5G and the towers and everything we get from the network providers today when we're doing stuff to make sure that we secure and understand what's happening on all these sensors on the grid. Because as an example, they don't even have the bulk of our energy grid does not have sensors that are automatically reporting its health. Figuring out the health of the grid is being done by people sitting in a control room that, I think this is pretty good. I think we're okay. It's closer to green screens than it is to a gamified user experience. And I mean, come on, they want to do more, they want to do better, and we are engaging with them, showing them the art of the possible. This is why I think Hypergiant is so unique. It's because we don't talk about AI in our engine as this holy grail. We talk about our design and the art of the possible and our services to make it real as the holy grail. Of course, you have an engine in the middle that holds the data and puts the data together in a way that makes it unique. So you can say this plus this plus this plus this minus this. And if this event happens, then this does this. And here's my probability of that. Okay, that's super cool. But that's an AI engine. Mm-hmm. We all have that, right? So that's cool. But showing the art of the possible with design and delivering on it so you can make sure it's real, that's what helps us deploy and make our customers successful.
Well, and you said infrastructure is not sexy. Like the stuff that like kind of you're dealing with here is not sexy, and I think that's been part of the problem. I think there's been an underinvestment, certainly in our power grids and things like that for many, many, many years. And the thing that is interesting to me that I love the prospect of bringing AI into this world because people don't react until there's a problem in that space, right? Like the grid goes down. Oh God, we got to invest, right? But the promise of AI is that you can kind of proactively predict, some of these failure scenarios, and then maybe that will get people's attention to start investing in and solving for some of these problems before they become a big problem, right?
Yeah. Which is where I kind of love this idea, and I think this is also a big hype word, but it's the digital twin.
Yeah.
Right. So that people who talk about the digital twin,
the metaverse.
Yeah, the metaverse, the digital twin, it's like, but it's like, look, all we want to do is if it's really windy in Iowa, and Iowa's made a big investment in wind power, right, which is interesting and cool. So if you go to Iowa, you'll see a ton of wind power. If it's calm in Iowa, Iowa has to import. If it's windy, Iowa's an exporter. So you can run these case scenarios of, okay, if this and this and this happens, we have to import to Iowa because it's really dry and not windy. And then what happens for our backup in Illinois, who's exporting, and Illinois has a situation, then if that happens, then how do I pull from Indiana? So you can leverage this technology and digital twin or just to gamify the system so that you can start running these what if scenarios to run probabilities and predictions on what would you do if this happens? How do you do this so that downstream Kentucky is not impacted by decisions you had to make in Iowa? Because they share energy across this grid on a very regular basis.
Yeah.
And those decisions are being made that day by some person sitting in a thing, not running what if scenarios. They're just trying to solve that one little problem. But that one little problem done wrong with this one that's done wrong, and then this one that's done wrong causes a catastrophic problem down here.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of data that we want to give them. So yes, that's a good decision as long as you're sure this and this aren't going to happen. If that's true, do decision here, right? And that's the kind of things that AI and decisioning can kind of help them with. It's just, we're trying to help digitally transform this world.
When I'm trying to understand your business and what you guys are doing, I understand you're very focused in security, space, and defense, national security, space, and defense. What is the biggest challenge that you see that you need to solve for as an organization? Is it, in order for you guys to be successful in your mission, we obviously all hope you are, but is it a people thing? Is it an education? Is it money? Is it funding? Is it just the tech isn't there yet? Like what's the challenge there?
Yeah, I think we are over this. We are just about over this problem. But I think the biggest problem why people don't go here is the amount of time and energy and mental capacity that I and my team have to put in to do little projects for the government, and then to have the government give us a little bit of money. I mean, we are finally doing a really important project for the government, and it took us 3 years to get there. It's like 3 years. It's like, look, I'm a software company. I'm a software company that is trying to show amazing growth with revenue. and look, I am going to show that because our numbers are insane now. Thank God that we had the foresight and the courage to stay in this fight when we were about out of money for 2 years, 3 years. And we stayed true to this mission around space and defense because we believe it's coming. And I will say 8 out of 10 either vaporized or moved on to do something for somebody else and said, oh, I'm going to go help T-Mobile, or I'm going to go help USAA, or I'm going to go help a enterprise company because they'll pay me $5 million now, rather than the government working on this for 3 years to get $5 million. Now, the nice thing is, once your software is in a new class of submarines, your software is live for 20 years. So it's got a wonderful long-term vision, but you have to be able to fund that.
Yeah.
And that's hard. So to me, while I think our government has come so far, we have a long way to go.
I'm so glad you said that. I'm so glad you said that. Sorry to cut you off there.
No, it's good.
Yeah, no, Chris and I have been talking about that as well. I've always been wondering, like, why are we not incentivizing more and more customers, just to make changes that are in the best interest of America, quite honestly. Like we talk about security a lot. We talk about, 3% of budget should be towards security and blah, blah, blah. But what is our government doing about a lot of that? And I really get like freaked out when we got this whole Russia craziness happening right now. And, and cybersecurity technology is what they're threatening us with, right? It's not just the nuclear warheads, right? It's just such a complicated problem. But what it does, like what worries me about that is that if our country is not focused on it, right? And just based on what Mike just said, right? It took them 3 years to even get a contract, right? That makes me nervous. So it sounds like part of the problem, tell me, Mike, if you agree, is at the government level, there's not enough focus on this.
Yeah, I think change is slow, and it's a little painful, to a software guy like me, because it just shouldn't be this slow. But if you do take the long view, the difference today versus 3 years ago is astronomical. So if we cannot get all messed up internally in our internal fights in government and just stay focused, if the change that took place in the last 3 years, if we can do that again the next 3 and the next 3, we're going to be in great shape. Because I am now paranoid that I don't have enough athletes to do this, because now that I've started to win this remote combat vehicle technology in the Army, the stuff that we're doing in the Air Force, it's now that I've started to win these things, the deals that we're doing for the energy grid, now the water grid, now the road system, because we can save billions of dollars if we just leverage AI on how to manage our roads better. It's like billions of dollars. I'm now getting paranoid. It's like, okay, look, I don't need 30 data scientists. I need 80 data scientists. I'm going to need 200 data scientists. And now I have to get these kids out of college and get them, you got to get them in college, and then we got to get them through college, and then we got to get them fast to become senior data scientists instead of junior data scientists, right? So I think our leaders have shifted. I think everybody is 100% aware that, look, I'm worried about nukes too. I think we should all be worried about nukes. But look, the world state, the bad future is shut down water supply, shut down energy, shut down power, shut down food, and you'll have massive self-destruction. Yeah. And that's a clean war. So no one's going to be viewed as terrible doing that versus, you can't drop a nuke. I mean, who could do that? You can't do that. I mean, that's insane. You would be, it's a war crime, right? But it's like, blowing up their communication network, maybe that's not as bad. I mean, I think the world, the rambling answer, but I think the world is awake now that we must protect our critical infrastructure. And it is part of war. And that's really cool. Because now I take what I've done in the Army and the critical infrastructure guys say, look, if you can figure out how to make tanks more efficient, I think you can figure out how to make our energy grid a little more efficient. So I'm optimistic.
Well, if we can just get everybody to stay focused on that and not, Will Smith slapping people, I think we may have a shot.
Right. Absolutely.
So Mike, what's next for Hypergiant? Where you go next?
If I go past this, so if I play it forward 5 years or 3 years, I really want to focus on the person, on the health. Look, we have to get the military right. We have to get critical infrastructure right. Why don't we leverage technology to get you right, to get you healthy? So we are starting to dig into the healthcare sector. I wear an Oura ring. I track my sleep. We all track every single thing. There's so much data about what to do and what not to do, yet we still all make really stupid decisions. The population is insanely overweight. We don't do the right things. Yet people want to do the right things. They just need to start to learn how. And when you could have an AI assistant to helping you what to eat, when to eat, how to eat, what not to do, stand up, walk around, just little things. All of a sudden, you can change the relationship between the healthcare provider and the person. And we're seeing things. We're seeing things like the Apple Watch is like looking at someone's EKG and just seeing, oh my God, I think I might have a problem. And you go to the doctor and say, yeah. It's like how cool is that? So, today that is an edge case, and that is for the wealthy. And we need to get everybody healthy, which we need to create apps and we need to create technology that makes it easier to get, for you to share your health data, and so that you can be given information of what you should do. One size doesn't fit all. And I grew up, in the era when a calorie is a calorie is a calorie. Who cares? Eat this. It doesn't matter. Captain Crunch is just as good as eating a salad. It's just a calorie. It's like, oh my God. So it's a different world now. Anyway, that's where I would like to go. I don't know if we'll ever get there, because I'm 100% committed to our space and defense and critical infrastructure, because, in my last 10 years of working, I want to have lasting impact on something that really, really matters to securing this nation and securing democracy. And that's just super cool and fun for me to say I'm part of that. My personal passion is health. But, that may be for someone else. But I would love to get there if we get a chance to get there in Hypergiant.
Well, I mean, you definitely are putting forth a bold vision, and I do hope you get to the health part of it, because I could use a little help. I've been doing the Noom thing lately, and I lost about 12 pounds. So, the apps,
everyone's trying. Everyone's trying.
I got a long way to go though. So get that AI going, all right? And if you could just make it a lot easier for me to just do that myself, that'd be great.
Poof. The magic
I want the magic pill.
Right?
The magic pill would be really helpful.
Yeah.
Well, Mike, thanks so much for coming on. Thanks so much for sharing your bold vision with us. And, we're eager to watch how you guys grow and what you guys do. And hopefully you do achieve everything that you're looking forward to. So I really appreciate you being on. Thanks so much.
Thank you, guys. It was great talking to you.
Thanks, Mike.
Hey, I just wanted to take a quick minute and let everybody know that I am participating in St. Baldrick's. In fact, I am a Squire of Hope for St. Baldrick's. I've done it many years, and it helps to find a cure for children's cancer. And there's a little girl who is a neighbor of mine who I support every year, Sophia Z, and she's an absolute sweetheart, and always want to raise money to help kids like her who have cancer. So if you can, I would love for you to visit my St. Baldrick's page at stbaldricks.org/participants/cbrandt. And you can hopefully donate a little money to help end childhood cancer. And I want to thank everybody who's donated in the past, and thank anybody who's going to be donating now. And it's really an important mission that they're on there, and just want to support them as best I can. So head on over there if you can. Anything that you can give will help, and really appreciate it. And I'll see you in the next video.